Wonderful class.
Thanks, Felicia. Hey guys, happy Friday. And welcome to our class. I missed you last week. I'm really glad to be here. Let me hit my buttons really quick. And today we have a really fun stash busting class. And I love projects like this because number one, they're easy and you can make bunches of them. They also have the potential to be 100% unique because, you know, you may have only one or two of these beads left from a project you did before. And so when I say stash busting, I think you guys all know what I mean, but just in case anyone's new to that word, I thought I might show what a stash looks like in very small percentage. So how many of you guys have piles like this around your house? You've been beading for any length of time. You know what I mean? Just stacks, and sometimes they're trays. Sometimes they're just bins full of little plastic bags where we still have maybe the header card because you want to remember what it's called. I have a lot of that. So if you've got piles like this, here's ways you can use them. And sometimes it, you know, even though this, the concept here is super easy and it's been done a lot, but it sometimes helps just to see someone else do some stringing. I think that often inspires me too. I'm like, hang on, I have beads like that, or I have similar beads, or I have another bead that gives me an idea. So just grab all of your random beads that you've got and then go get some seed bead tubes. And so I'm working with a combination. I put these together since we're stringing them, we're not stitching them. I'm going to mix up brands. I'm going to use my favorite color currently, this really beautiful magenta. It's like a size 6.0 seed bead. And if you look in the handout, I've given the SKU for this bead. And then I've also given the SKU for this bead. This is an 11.0 Toho seed bead, and it'll be clearer when I switch to matte. But I'm just taking that, all these random beads, and the only thing I, have that's kind of like a bought item that's for this particular project, you can use anything, and I'll show you where, but I did pick up some gemstone brios, and I picked up the strand of metal and enamel eyes. Now, I never used the little eye. That's going to get used for another project, the blue eye there. But what I used is this little bead here, and I'll show that closer too. But I used it as a way to kind of weave through. I have a bunch of more ideas for this strand. So I'm thinking this is just a way to use a little bit of it and to use the bead that I, didn't buy it for actually. So that's kind of another good point, is maybe you buy a strand for one type of bead and you have this leftover one that was on it that you need something to do with. So here's an idea for that. I'm also kind of playing with metal mixing. So I'm mixing up bronzes, golds, and silvers. And that's something fun to do. So it liberates you from worrying about having the perfect finding. Or the perfect bead, or because I'm using a lot of metal beads here for findings. And I think maybe we'll switch to the mat now so I can show some of this stuff just a little closer. But got a lot of findings. Thanks, Felicia. A lot of findings here. Some chain, and of course, don't worry about the chain. Use any chain you've got. I am using some paperclip chain, and I grabbed the silver plated in this case. But in a lot of projects we've been using the gold. That's what you've got. Feel free to use that. And then a crimp bead and a really nice lobster claw. But again, anything kind of like this, or even any other kind of clasp that you have that you want to use, it's going to work just fine. This is absolutely use your favorite bead, use what you have. And it's all on beading wire. So the beading wire that I used, I went ahead and went for something really supple. I went for a 49 strand, which is going to be your most flowy. And I went for a 0.018. Now, you don't have to do exactly what I'm doing. For example, I'm down to a little bit of this. I'm really low. So before I came up here today, I grabbed some 19 strand, and it's a little smaller. And I feel like that's still going to work because it's going to be maybe a trade-off between size and strand count. So maybe I'll still get some flowy results for that. So even if you just have 7 strand, go ahead and use that too. I do think it'll work. These are the ones that I've tested and tried, and they came out pretty good. And so the class project is the one that I showed here. And this is the one we'll walk through today. But I just wanted to throw extra inspo out there. I do have one more idea in my head in case we have extra time. But here's one thing you can do is just take all those beads and also do a bracelet. There are on the strand wall currently a lot of upgrades going in the ceramic line. And they've been really catching my attention. I've been mixing them up with some of the beads that I've purchased in the past, like these eyes. Those have been there a while, but I grabbed those maybe almost a year and a half ago now and hadn't used them yet. So this was an idea there. I did one with just seed beads and crystal. I only had a few seed beads left, so these are 6-0 with some 11-0. These are the ones that are in the handout. I threw that little eye bead on there. I'm sure you guys have all seen that one on the strand wall. And then I put some leftover round crystals. And so those Czech crystals are, you know, just the last 2 I had probably on a strand that I wanted to do something with. And so this is just a simple bracelet, but you know, it's really cool and I wear it a lot. Here's another one that uses kind of some tube metallic beads. If you guys have seen those in the strand wall too, it's in them. There's a wall of metals, and that's where I found these. And again, I just stuck those on some beading wire. And how cool is that? So even though these are really simple, easy to make, we are getting kind of close to gift season here. So these styles right now are probably, you know, among the most popular. So even though we're bead weavers, a lot of us here are, and we enjoy doing more complicated projects than this, you need gifts, this is how to do it. And you can still use your seed beads, and it's quick, fast. This necklace looks really cute on. It is really stylish, and it has this cute little drop going, which I just thought was so neat. And this bead here, you could do anything here. It does not have to be a brio. You could put a big round gemstone bead. You could put a big round pearl. A pearl would be really cool. And then this bead here, anything, any bead will work. I went with this little coin metallic because it was cool. But other than that, any bead here that you can bring both strands through, because it has to be big enough, just a little big enough to have both of those strands go through it. And I'll show you that. Yeah, and then you're just stringing. These counts are all up to you. You can switch them around. I think I went with 7 beads in between each interest bead. And then just crimping, and that's the whole thing. So what I'm going to show you is how I did this one. So some of the details into like how much do I cut and how to work from the spool, things like that. But it's all also here in the handout. And everything I've used. I haven't gone over tools yet, but I have shown a little bit about how it was made and what bindings I used. So let's start with showing some tools, and then we'll cut our beading wire. So you're going to need some crimpers, and that's going to be how, if anyone's new to crimping, we'll go through a little slow on this because it's helpful to see it, even if you aren't into it. It's just kind of something good to see. And I'm using, again, some sterling silver crimp tubes. But there's lots of crimp tubes out there, and I think lots of things will work. Those are just the ones that I have handy. And then regular standard crimper, right? Your standard size, not the micro and not the big one. This is just your standard crimper. To cut your beading wire, you are going to need something a little stronger. So take a look at flush cutters for cutting beading wire. You're going to need something like this, like a flush cutter that you would also use for your wire working. You could also, if you have really, really good scissors, it might work, but I'll be using my flush cutters today. There's a couple different versions here you can try. But if it says it'll cut copper wire, you're in. It'll work great. Yeah, and so that's tools. That's what we need there. What else can I show you? Got a crimper, we've got our flush cutters. I think that's pretty much it. Let's go ahead and get our beading wire. So put this aside. I cut 35 inches when I started because I already had a plan. And my plan was to make a necklace that was this length. So if you measure it, and I measure it here off camera, but if you measure it from the bead where it's going to hang on you, you're going to get about 21 inches. So measured from here to where it clasps, and then it's adjustable to be a little bit bigger than that, just because I put paperclip chain on there. But this length that I made is up to you. Anything you'd like to do. But what I did is I cut about 35 inches. If you like this length, you'll get about a 21-inch necklace. You give yourself a lot of extra. Some gets consumed right here, not a lot, but you want to have extra to weave your tail back in and do a really good crimp. It's kind of difficult to do crimps with a really short end of beading wire. I think I saw a class once that Meredith did where she was showing kind of how hard it is to do a crimp. You only have a little bit left. So let's be generous with it. You can work from the spool. The only challenge with working from the spool is getting the you would have to work this part after you string some of it. And I just found it to be a little easier to work from the midpoint. And so that's what I'm going to do today, but I think you could do either. If you really don't like working, you know, you do end up with a little bit of waste. So if that's a concern, you can work from the scale. But let's take a look at even on our handout here. It's all here, so you don't have to memorize anything that I'm telling you, but here's the 35 inches. And I'm going to go ahead and drop the bead to the middle. We'll have 2 equal lengths of beading wire on the side. So let's just start with that. Let's get my drop ready. We're going to need some of those. And cutting 35 inches here. So roughly about there. Let's go ahead and cut that. Okay. And I wanted to share one other thing real quick as I get started. This beautiful rhodonite one, if you're loving this color, especially next to it's magenta, I felt like there was something special about that. If you're liking that a lot, I found this the other day when I went back to kind of restock my supplies. Haven't used it yet, but it matches. And you could just do, if you didn't want to do random, like I did on this one, you could just maybe select out the really, really big ones because that's going to be maybe too big, but you could do this exact design, but using these beads and just mix up the order in which you add them. So that's something I might actually still do and then post it later just for inspo because it's a cool idea. And I had my eye on this one, although this one is really cool. The way that looks. Let's see, that was my first impulse. I'm gonna go with that one. Let's move those over. And there's little bugles in between that. I actually save these. They're pretty cute. Use those for something. Okay, so here's my 35-inch strand. It's really long. So you're gonna see the ends of it. And what I do to find midpoints is just bring my ends together. Hopefully that's visible for you guys there. Yeah, so hold that. Just bring that down. And let's get our seed beads. And again, these are 11-0 and they're like a metallic bronze color. Skew is in the handout if you like this color. Start with a little bit there. And I just pinch it here to keep that midpoint in place while I string on either side. We're gonna just bring 10 beads on each side. Yeah, Winnie, I love the teardrop beads. There's, I believe there's a matching one for all the gemstone strands. 2, 3, there's 6 for me. And then if you're picking up seed beads with your beading wire, what I'm doing here is I'm using it like a needle. This will work for you. It's a little harder than a needle. Harder meaning it's more difficult. It's softer than a needle. So it requires a little finessing when you're kind of making it behave like a needle, but it is possible. And one of the ways to do it is just kind of get it maybe a little bit like this in your fingers, and then just go through and start grabbing beads. So there's my 4. And I just count them off in chunks usually, so I don't lose count. And 4 more here. And then there's 2. All right. So there we go, 10 beads on either side of our brio. Let's set that down. And now we need to get these. And again, this strand has these little eye beads. And it's kind of a shame they have this really nice wire work already done. It's a shame I'm gonna have to cut that, but I wanted to be able to string the bead. But if you wanted to use this, the wire wrapping is done for you already. So if you have another design in mind, you could just open those simple loops. A little cool thing to point out. I'm going to cut it, but it's a really nice simple loop. All right, so there's that bead. Okay, so what we're gonna do, so we've got our brio here. We got 10 beads on either side. We're just gonna bring each end through that bead. I'm still trying to preserve my midpoint. If you lost your midpoint a little bit, you can always just find it again really quickly now. So bring one side through this way and one side through the other way. I'm just going to hold it. Just pull on one side just to keep my midpoint going here. Oops, lost my midpoint there. Let's make sure I got that still. A little hard under the camera. I actually use gravity. When I was doing this before, I just kind of used my gravity to tell me where I am. So right about there. There we go. Okay. How cute is that? Now, if you're already thinking ahead of where you could take this, you're so right. Like making a bracelet like that, can you picture it? It's been done a lot, but it never gets old. I think it looks so cool. And every time you change the beads, it looks like a brand new design. And every time you change these counts. So you could do a bracelet where instead of the brio, you have your clasp, and then you've got a nice interest bead. You string 10 more on each side, come back through, and just keep going. You get a bracelet that goes all the way around like that. So if we get time at the end, we'll do something like that. But let's finish our necklace. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to stick with the 7 beads that I did before. Let me show you what it looks like. So we're coming out from that bead there, and we will just cut 7 beads here, 7 beads here, and put on any bead you want at that point, and then do 7 more. If you wanted to change that count, you could. Here's what it looks like with 3. 3 is really cute. It'll use more of your beads too, but it's more busy. So it just depends which you like. And again, here's another version where I just did 1. There's just 1 seed bead spacing those. So depending what you're doing and what you like, here's again, just 1 and a 6/0 and a 1 as a spacer. So you can bring in that 6/0. In this case, I use my 6/0 as an interest bead. That's actually that magenta 6/0 seed bead there. And it pops up, you know, here and there just to tie everything together. I thought it looked really neat. This one really came out cool. Like it just looks really neat to me. Let's grab some random beads. Let's start with, so I've got these beautiful gray ones. Gray, and I'm going to be all gray today, all gray mood here, but here's some pearl. I thought pearl looked really cool. And then there's some shell. I think I saved these from our seaside bracelet. That might be where I got this little collection from. Another thing I have from the strand wall in my stash, you guys will recognize these little cubes. Those are hanging on the strand wall. They're little, there's like a ombre mix and little discs. And I think those are actually amazonite discs there. But now we need some color. Let's go for some dark blue and some red. And that's more of a hematite. Let's go for some, I've got some of these red crystals. Those, I want some of the little ones, little cute ones better. I do have off camera here some of my leftover crystal. Let's find some of that actually. Let's grab. Would orange be too crazy? Let's take a look. I don't think so. We could do that. We'll see. We'll have to play with that. It might be too much. But with magenta, I don't know. Magenta, it kind of works. Let's see. And there's some topaz. And I still have green. One color we don't have out. See, I'm just kind of playing. I'm not sure I'm going to use all these, but they're out on the mat and they're visible together. And that's kind of what I'm doing. I just want to see them all on display with each other. Let's move this down a little. Okay. All right, let's get 7 beads on each side. You know, I was just seeing the comment from Carmi. Yeah, so for one of the things I try to do is I'm trying to use them up because I know there's new stuff coming and I want to go get. So I can only justify it if I use my beads that I have. So that's what I'm doing here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So otherwise I come home with another bag and it's like, oh boy, I got all these others. So this will use a lot. Okay, so there's 7 on each side. You do have to kind of tighten it each time. Got that going. And I'm going to choose, one thing I was doing here, let me go back and explain a little bit more, is I started off kind of matching sizes, and then I changed my mind and started offsetting. And this way you guys could see both and you could decide. What I mean by that is, you notice how the small and the large beads are offset from each other side by side there versus kind of matching it. It's up to you, whatever you like. In hindsight, I think I like the offsetting better. Let's get some of these out. I think I'm going to do that with this one. So let's go for maybe a seed bead first. And then let's go for a pearl. All right, and so I'm just going to speed up and just start stringing. And I don't even know where it will take me, but we'll see. Just 3 and 3 and 1. And so this side I want to put a larger bead now. So let's go for maybe I want a blue. Let's get a blue one. I'm going to end up using every color. It's a little small. I want an 8mm. It's a little big. What do I have in here? Oh, here we go. That's what I was looking for. Okay. So let's go for this one. You like it? Yeah. Blue and bronze, definitely. And let's see. There's 7 here. Let's get on a red maybe, or no, I'm gonna go for a green crystal. And this will tighten up as we go. At the moment, I'm still kind of encouraging this part to stay tighter, but we will just keep encouraging it as we go. So let's add something interesting. Let's go for some of the shells maybe. Yeah, and so this thing I'm doing with the wire, how I was saying, I am using it as a needle. It takes a little practice. Give yourself some patience. It doesn't always work out instantly for you, but it will work. And it does actually work better with stiffer wire, but then it's kind of a trade-off. It's like, I love the flowy, but it's harder to string. So it's definitely something that you keep getting better though. So there's 6, and then I just need 7. And let's go for some shell. Put that on there. So you can see every time you make one of these, are all going to be different and really beautiful. But if I ever get back out to the shows, you know, where you sell your work, one of the things that I was thinking is this would be a really cool feature because it would be tied together. It would look cohesive. It would look like things were designed to be seen together, but they would still be different. Each one would be 100% unique. Some folks might decide they really like one color combination over another. You could do one that is matchy, like with the matched gemstone. I might need to pull some of those off and get some pink going in here, so maybe we'll do that. So let's see here, we've got. But what I like the most about doing this is just the freedom to use my beads up, and I don't know what this is going to look like before I start. I mean, you could lay it out. You could get yourself like one of those, you know, boards and just lay it out and see, but it's actually funner for me anyway to do it this way, just to kind of see what happens. And there's that. I need my interest bead and another 7. Let's grab. Let's do, yeah, freestyling. Way to go. Okay, I'm going to do a few of these. And maybe a few of the smaller. I wonder if I should bring in some chips. Let's do some chips as well. There's some of those rhodonite. And let's get some rhodonite chips as well. And everything I'm doing on this mat is going to end up in another one of those little dishes, right? Those little containers. Okay. And let's do this one. And that's an 8mm, and that's about as big as I want to go on this design, but you can definitely use any beads you've got. I think in the handout, I was recommending keeping it under 6mm. And I do still recommend that, but I strayed from it here and it's still looking pretty good. But they're a little big. You're going to get a different look than we had on the other one. On the other one, I was keeping them to 6mm or smaller. So it's a more delicate chain. And this one is going to be less delicate. It's also going to start to affect your length. And that was something I wanted to talk about a little bit. If it matters to you that you kind of have a 1-for-1, where for the most part, if you laid it like this, they're kind of next to each other from side to side, you'll need to make sure you use the same number of large beads on each side to keep that going. If that's important, which it isn't necessarily required. But just something to keep in mind if you're trying to debate where to put what. So for example, currently I've got an 8mm bead on each side. So my length should stay good, and actually got the same number of 4 and 6mm as well. It doesn't matter where you put them, it's just the overall net when you get to the end. 4, 5, 6, and there's 7. Okay. So how are we doing here? Thinking. Yeah, so we'll do another small bead above this one. And I'm going to speed up just a tiny bit. We're still doing great on time, but stringing can take a while. There's our 7. Put a little pearl in there. They're definitely moving around on me, that is for sure. So there's 7. Let's grab a C bead now. Let me do another one. And I kind of alternate from working one side and then switching back to the other. Does anyone else do that when you're stringing? But I kind of feel like if I get one side done, I can go back and just kind of mirror and offset from that. So I'm going to do that a little bit and see how that goes. It's faster at all. And let's use some of those amazonite. Those are cute. Whenever I use a chip bead, I usually use a few more. Same with a little spacer bead like that. Let's put 3 and see how that looks. Did I do that on this one? Looks like on this one I just went with 2. Still really cool with 3 though. Let's do 3. Here's 7. Put those on there. Okay. As we get closer to the top, I'll start talking about how to figure out our length. I'm not quite there yet. Let's get some, well, we just did this, so let's not do chips yet. Let's go for, I need a bigger bead. I don't know. How do you guys feel about turquoise or gray? Well, we've got a lot of gray. I haven't used those squares, but some turquoise. The little ones sink to the bottom, so I gotta kind of dig for them. Here's 2 sizes of that. Oh, these little dishes are so cool. There's our Rondo. Yeah, that's coming out really nice. I like the turquoise with the rhodonite. That's inspiring a whole new idea now.
Hey, Danielle, it's Carmi.
Hey.
I didn't want to leave you alone too long because obviously you're looking for a little bit of response from the sidebar, and I don't have any questions I'm going to ask you, but I will say this: you do have quite a few regulars who are asymmetrical in their design work, and this would be a struggle for them. So we're trying to convince them to try your way.
Oh no, I want to see their way.
So any tips for the people who have difficulty not having a plan and just digging in?
Yeah, just dig in and just start stringing. Honestly, this is just me playing and doing something that I think looks good to my eye, but you could do anything and it would look so unique and different. Yeah, absolutely. There's no reason you have to even use the same counts. In fact, doing the counting with the beads is adding time to the design. If you were in a hurry, you could just do this. You could just dump it out and just string as many as happens naturally in that round, right? Just like bring on some beads, right? And see what happens. Absolutely. No, it's you know, it's anything. That's what I like about designs like this, is you can just do whatever you want. Sometimes I see designs in magazines that oh, I did double there, sorry guys. I see designs in magazines where they've done a random scatter spaced by a seed bead. There's 7. And show you guys another trick really quick. So you see how I want to take these off, pinch them, get that bead there, whichever bead ends up wanting to go on my needle, and let's see if I get lucky. Woohoo! Didn't have to restring those. Okay, I think I'm pretty good on this side. How to measure your length. Let's talk about that for just a second. I'm going to slide my mat up so you can see my lines and tighten from here. I'm going to measure from this bead and see what I get. So I think I'm going to add one more segment here, and then I will do the same thing where, let's actually bring it to the 0. That will help us out a little bit. So just off camera, what you guys are seeing is it's going to, right now it's at 8. So, and you want to go ahead and add 1 inch if you're going for the length that it's going to drop when you're wearing it. See how this is 1 inch? And that's kind of why I went with the 10 count, because it makes the math easier. But over here, I'm just hanging out at the, I'm just a hair over the 8 mark. So if I go another inch, I'll have 9 on that side and on that side. So that will be 20 with the chain. You could call it 21. So maybe I'll go for that just because it's a little easier. So let's do one more on this side. And then this side's done. Okay, so that's done now. And then for the top of it, and we'll do the whole closure once I get the other side done. But for the top, I did end with seed beads. So let me show you really quick. I ended with just a 7. Not a requirement. Nothing here is a requirement. It's just, that's what I did. And I'm just showing what I did the first time. I kind of liked how it came out. And if you do too, that's how I did it. But definitely try anything else that you like. If you have a little Scotch tape stopper bead, put it on that side. I'm going to risk it. It's just kind of hanging out there. So let's see. On this side, I've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 repeats. Here I've got 6 now. So I got a little ways to go here. Let's kind of like hustle string this one. And I get 7 beads on there. 2, 3, 4, 5. And not required, but I am going to try to match the number of, at least the number of larger beads that I use. So here's a larger, and a larger. This one I've got one. So let's add another one here. Got 2 pearls already on the side. Maybe it's time for one of these. You'll find yourself doing this a lot. You'll get bored of the ones you've strung in a couple of times and you'll want different ones. Luckily for us, we probably have a lot of beads in our stash that we can go for that. And I don't know about you guys, but after a project like this, I can talk myself into shopping again. So you'll find me at the strand wall, being bad, looking at beads. Even my kids are like, Mom, you don't need any more beads. I'm like, but you don't need any more toys then. And then they stop. And it works. They like going because there's little goodies at that store at our local Michael's. There's little stuff for the kids. I'm telling you, if anyone from Michael's is listening, that works. My kids get excited about going to Michael's. That works for me. Okay, I just need one more bead on here. All right, yeah, 3, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, okay, so I'm good with big beads. Now let's just keep it under the 6mm size. There's 1 and 7. Okay, and do something different. Let's grab some chips. I poured out all these chips and then I've been afraid to pick them up. Let's go with that. That's going to complement nicely what I did with the rondelles over here. With these guys. It's going to look really good. And I apologize, you guys can't see the whole span of what I got going on the mat. But I am able to see the whole bracelet, or sorry, the whole necklace going this way. Great. So I'm able to see what I'm doing from a grander scale here. A bird's eye view. I just need 2 more.
Danielle?
Yeah.
The Toho beads, because of course, everybody has different naming conventions for the sizes.
Yeah.
The Toho beads are 2.2mm. But if anyone in our group today doesn't have Toho, what's the equivalent? Would you say 8 or 6?
Actually, a Czech Toho.
A Czech Toho would be equivalent to this Toho.
They're going to be a little rounder. You're going to get closer to 2.1 or even 2. But the reason I named it that is actually because that's what they called it on the Michael's website. I had a really hard time finding this tube. I was searching under Toho 11.0 and it didn't come up, but it came up if you type that in. So I just did that to save somebody searching, but you do have the SKU either way. So, but definitely, I can pour out some Czech after this. Remind me, and I'll show it next to each other and we can measure it. Here's 7. All right, let's see what these look like. Okay, I think I'm pretty close to being done. I might need to do the last 7. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh yeah, okay. So I just need the last 7. Now I wanted to mention just really quick, I absolutely did not finish one end before. I left them loose on either end for a reason, and that's going to be so that I can have one more last chance to make sure everything is nice and snug. So here's 3 and 3 and so yeah, I did go for some symmetry, but not absolute symmetry. It's let me bring these up. Okay. So just laying it side by side. The counts that I have are 13 on each side, but you notice how one's shorter than the other? I'm gonna add something over here. Something really small. Maybe just a little rondelle, or how about a 6 OCB, the thinner one? Let's grab one of those. So that's why at the end, it's nice to not have finished one side, so you can make this final adjustment. And make sure that they're the same height. And if they weren't the same height, that's still okay. You can still do that. Your chain is going to even it out. But for the most part, what I'm doing here is I'm pinching the top of my 6/0s, sliding that down and seeing where we get. Maybe even give this one little tug in this direction. Make sure our center's good. Let gravity do the work. What I'm doing off camera is lifting it up and just letting gravity settle it. And I'm taking a look at it as it would be worn, as everything settles. And I notice it's a little taller on this side, the other side. I'm going to be okay with that. We're going to let the chain and the clasp absorb that. But I'm going to put the clasp on this side, the side that's a little shorter, because the clasp gives you a visual perception of that side being longer. So let's grab our crimp tube. Time to crimp. This here, they're in a little baggy. I keep them like that because I tend to lose these, and the clamshell, they can sneak out. So if you want to keep this little baggy, it's good. Or put them in one of your little plastic containers. But they are silver, so it's kind of good to keep them in the plastic, I think, if you're using the sterling like I am. Okay, let's get one side. So just bring your crimp bead on and slide that down. Should sit like right there. And let me grab my clasp mat. Oop. I must have brought a new one up here. I thought I brought my opened one, but there we go. They reseal, so save them, keep them. Really handy. Okay, I'm gonna bring on the clasp. And then just go ahead and bring the wire back down through. Oops. And if you can get it through some of your seed beads, feel free to do that. That is actually my preferred way when I crimp. But this wire isn't going through my seed beads as easily as I remember it. So I'm going to do it this way for this one. It's okay either way. But sometimes I really do like to get the wire through the seed beads at least once. You could put another bead up there, but okay. So on your crimper, and I'm going to go a little slow in case anyone's new to crimping. What you have is two different teeth. You've got one where there's a bend. You see how it makes kind of like a little U shape there, or a rainbow. And then you got the open side. You want to do a compression with this one that will kind of create that little rainbow. And then this side is used to fold it. And I'm hoping that it will come across really nice on the camera for you to see. One thing you might want to try to do is try not to cross the beading wire in the crimp. So if it can be side by side parallel, the one coming up through it and going back down, that's ideal. It's hard to do, especially on the finishing side. But, and another thing, when I'm closing, I secure my crimp down on the side that's got the open. So the top of the rainbow, and then I compress down. And that's just so I can see, right? And again, I'm just going to take one quick look here. It got a little loose when I was explaining. And I like to pinch with my thumbnail just below my crimp. And that's holding those beading wires in place. And I'm going to just tighten that just a little more. That's about how much air you want to give your beading wire around your clasp, so you can get some sway. It has sway right now. When you crimp, you're going to lose some of that length. So about yay much. And that's probably, let me give you some measures. It's a hair under the 2 tick marks over an inch. So about a 1/10 of an inch or so. 1/10 or 20th, I think. So there's the first crimp. And again, I put the tube in the rainbow side, compressed it, and you're getting something that looks like that. And it looks good. It looks, both of my wires went on either side. They're on either side of that little rainbow. And so from here, bring your tool over and get that rainbow so that it sits kind of facing the front outside section of the tool. And when you compress it, it should close the rainbow up. Then you guys can see that maybe better from down here. But what it did is it closed it. And it's that easy. So I'm just going to trim this. Just want to get as close as you can. And then just give it a snip. Save that extra beading wire, make some earrings. And I'm going to see if I can get at least that little tail to tuck into my seed bead there. And that was a success, so that's great. And now let's tighten again from this other side. And yeah, see comments about a wire guardian. Absolutely. Yeah, you could totally use a wire guardian. That's actually, I do know there's a class out on that. It wasn't taught by me, it was taught by Meredith Roddy. She has a class on using those with beading wire. It's a really great class. You can check that out if you don't like just going straight onto the wire. Okay. So what I'm doing right now, you can't see off camera, but I'm using gravity to help me out. You don't want it to be super, super tight. You do want to just keep its flow going and not kink. But the cool thing is about necklaces is that once you've got the ability to do, let me show you. You've got the ability to spin it like this. So if I do that, I know a couple things are happening for me. It's not going to loose up on me as easy while I'm doing my work over here. And I know I've got enough flow to do a really pretty curve. If you photograph things like this, you're going to want to have that really pretty curve going on. And so that's what I did there. Okay, here's my other crimp. And I need to grab some chain really quick. So this is a closed chain with beading wire. If you're not using a wire guardian, like the gals were saying in the chat, you want to use a closed chain or closed jump rings, but something that's soldered. If you don't have something like that handy, you can make one. You can make one by just doing a wrapped loop and putting a little bead. And there you go. So here's my chain. Off camera here, I'm going to measure about 1 inch to 2 inches. Not sure how much do you really, but so there's, you know, just a little extender chain. And I like this chain a lot. It's a really perfect clasping chain for length. And another tip, we've shared this before, but I always like to share it. Have this, some jump rings and your tools with you if you're selling in person, because people will, two things, if they want to have length changed on something, you can do it on the spot for them. And also people like to buy extender chains. Like they'll come along and ask for that just to go with jewelry they already have. And so that's another cool thing you can do in your shop. So just bring that chain on there. Same thing. I'm going to go back through my crimp. And this is the moving side. This is the not moving side. I'm just going to pull right when you get to like right here, before you do anything else, just give this another push down. And I'm going to hold it on this side with my thumbnail just to make sure that they don't cross. Bring that down. And that looks pretty good right there. All right, so once again, I'm going to use the back of the pliers first, the rainbow U shape there. Let's give that. We'll click there. And then I'm going to face that rainbow out from the tool and use the front compression there. So just like that. And it makes a really nice crimp. And those sterling silver ones, they're just the right hardness, I feel like. And again, I'm just going to trim as close as I can. See my crimp. Let me get that close so you guys can see it. Sorry, I went off camera. There we go. If I'm lucky, I can tuck that tiny little tail into the seed bead here. You can also use a crimp cover. We saw those. Those are in the sterling silver. You can just put a nice little crimp cover on it. I'm not very good at putting them on, but they are a nice look. Okay, there we go. That's the whole thing. That's the whole design. Super easy. You can make a bunch more. You have tons of beads left. 1 tube of seed beads will probably make you 8 pieces of jewelry. I'm not exaggerating. It's definitely a super easy way to make stuff. And so now we've got 2 cohesive but very different necklaces that you could display and show off. anyone have any questions for me about this design or ideas? We've got a few minutes left. I can maybe show the crimp again on a small sample of wire or something like that. Thanks. Thanks, Carol. She says nice design. Thanks, Marguerite. So there's a question about the recording. So size for the crimp 2x2 recording will be available on, it's usually up by Monday or Tuesday. And the crimps I am using are these. So it's in the handout, the actual like SKU number, so you can bring that up on Michael's website, but it is a 2mm by 2mm crimp size. And then the lobster claws that I was using they're a 7mm. This is just what I had. You can use anything, 7 by 13. So it's a little bit on the bigger side, but easy to clasp behind you. So it's also kind of good. Just gonna put that on the end of the chain there so it matches my other one. And there you go. So try this as a bracelet. I didn't get time today. It took a little longer to string than I was thinking, but try doing this with a clasp right here. And then just keep making circles and then bring it through a chain on the other side and crimp it. You'll only need one crimp probably to finish that. So it's kind of cool. Oh, thank you. Thank you for saying you like the class. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's what, to borrow from Sarah Lovecraft, instant gratification jewelry. The stringing, is pleasant and enjoyable. And then it's, relatively quick compared to some of our seed beading. So yeah, you get something really good. Nice little result. Take those leftovers, make some bracelets that match it. Your little bracelet bucket next to your necklaces for people to dig through and find a treasure that they like, and have a whole jewelry booth pretty quick. Yeah, so let's see, for class coming up, what do we have coming up? We've got the scallop bracelet next. And that is going to be the Friday after next Friday. Next Friday, we don't have a class because I'm going to be away again. It's a Legoland. We're going to go on a little trip. So summer is always so crazy. So I'm going to miss you guys again next Friday. I'm sorry. But I will be back the Friday after that with the scallop bracelet. And that one's going to be really fun. Tune in for that. We're back to bead weaving. It's going to have a bunch of different bead weaving types mixed up in a still sort of beginner friendly design. We're going to do a single column peyote with a little edge, a little border that has crystal in it. So I'm excited to show that. It's going to be a really fun one. And had a request, I think, that popped up to see the necklace. I'm just going to pop that on really quick so you guys can see how cool it looks. It's a really neat design. And I'll probably just wear this the rest of the day. So, all right, and I'll see you guys the Friday after next. And I just want to wish you a really great weekend and the next week. And as always, if you make something from today's class or any class, we love seeing your work. So if you hashtag John Bead, hashtag Make It with Michaels, love to see it. Post in our Facebook group or on social media, and we'll see you there. All right, have a great weekend, guys. Happy beading.